So my the next guest that I'm calling in will play a very, very important role in precisely determining those questions. Ian Hodson is president of the Bakers, Food and Allied Workers Union, and he's really leading the way for the whole trade union movement. The Labour Party, as Eric referred to, was formed 125 years ago by the trade unions, which broke their link to the capitalist Liberal Party in an attempt to ensure that workers' interests were represented in Parliament. The only difference today is that Starmer's party is well to the right of the Liberals in those days. Ian today is blazing the trail for the trade unions in decisively breaking away from the clutches of a dying Labour Party, and when that happens, it'll be a pioneering step in an inevitable break as important as in 1900. So, Ian, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much. What a lovely introduction that was. Thank you, Roger. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure that so many people have come along tonight, which I think demonstrates the desire for something that represents our class. I mean, it is so sadly missing, unfortunately. It is something that isn't seen as that important. Although what we have seen recent weeks, in particular, is we've seen Reform adopting the language of our class, of our movement, and using it to get people to shift from voting for Labour to voting for Reform in some sort of warped idea that a fascist party could ever be an inclusive party. But we did see, didn't we, in recent weeks when Nigel Farage addressed his conference, what they mean by an inclusive society. They mean that they will include the people from the very top of society at the risk of alienating and demonizing people on the margins of our communities, the continuation of the hostile environment, and using any finance to undermine any chance of raising all of our class. They are not interested in raising any of our class. They are interested clearly in winning power and continuing the status quo that we've seen for decades, which has impoverished us, which has widened the inequality, and clearly has demolished trade union rights in this country. That has never even been restored when we had a Labour Party that was in power for 15 years. I mean, despite Labour being in power in these last 50 years, the trade union movement has not gained anything. In reality, our rights have not been improved in any way, and yet the trade union movement still forms the basis of legitimising Keir Starmer's Labour Party. And that should be very, very concerning. I mean, I was concerned when I heard Paul Novak welcoming Keir Starmer to the TUC and blindly, without any real detail, accepting that the Labour Party was going to fight for our interests and fight and improve workers' rights. And then within weeks, we saw him gutting the employment rights legislation that he was intending to bring in, which has been delayed until at least 2026. And yet still, those trade union leaders, with all of that money, continue to fund him, despite their members find themselves, facing, an £8,000 a year pay cut. And yet, one of the biggest contributors, their members, they're still funding their offices, they're still funding their campaigns, and they're still failing to hold that Labour Party to account. And what really worries me is that the trade union movement will be tied to a Labour Party, and people will see the trade union movement not as part of the solution, but as part of that problem. And that really should be a concern for all of us, because the trade union movement wasn't created to give cover to a party that represents the interests of the few. The trade union movement is about raising our class and improving the lives of the people that form our trade unions. And those trade unions that still affiliate to the Labour Party need to read the room. Their members, I believe, in a recent poll that trade unions have been conducting, have shown that 26% of them are now moving to support the likes of the Reform Party. And that's a scary thought that, a quarter of the trade union movement is now moving to a far right political organisation whose politics are based on hate, who's based on division, and yet Reform recognises it needs to use the language of our class. And that's why I think the call for a party that represents our interest and our needs and our demands, that is based on a lot of the things that Eric was just talking about previously. How do we do the things that we need to do for a secure party that represents our class? It has to be democratic. We can't have block votes. Obviously the Labour Party, was able to swing decisions it wanted by making sure that it could control the narrative and the agenda by buying off, general secretaries. Well, we've got to say that any new party has to be represented and inclusive, not exclusive. And if we're going to create a new party, then it should be done in public, and it should be enabling all people to become involved in it, not just some, but all. Because if we want to be truly representative, it has to be from the class, and it can't just be from some of it. And I do appreciate the words that you used at the very outset, Roger, which was that it's not about us to be the leaders. It's about our class to come together to build a movement, to build a party that gets victory, that's funded by us and that's won by us. Because I think that's really, really important, which is why I've always stayed clear of joining political parties, but have got involved in trying to build movements. And, I congratulate the organisers of today. And I'm sorry I've gone over a little longer because I put a stopwatch on and I've done 7 minutes. So I'm going to shut up. So do apologise.
Not at all, Ian. We wish we could have you speaking for longer, and perhaps at a future meeting we can do that.